In this demonstration, we'll take a look at how to compare the active configuration with the candidate configuration. So I'm already connected to my Junos device, and the first thing I want to do is go into configuration mode with my edit command. Now, in this example, I'm just going to work with one setting within my configuration, and that's the host name setting. But keep in mind, when we kind of show this demonstration on comparing your active config against the candidate config, that it actually applies to the whole configuration file, not just, the content that I'm focused on here. So I'm just using the host name because it's a quick, simple example of a configuration change that we can make to the system. So let's do that. First thing I want to do is use my show command to display my configuration. So when I do show, notice that up top, it shows that within the system section or the system portion of the hierarchy, we do have a host name set to New York R1. And I also have a number of other settings in here. The domain name is set as well. A name server, radius server, all kinds of different settings. But again, the host name is kind of what I'm focused on. So within the system portion of configuration, I do have the host name set to New York R1. So what I want to do is I want to modify that host name. So I use the set command, and the host name's within the system portion of configuration. So I use the word system, and then I set host name. And I'm going to set the host name to test1. And I'm going to hit enter. Now, the first thing that I want you to notice is the command completed without an error, but you'll notice that my prompt hasn't changed. And the reason is I've altered the host name in my what we call the candidate configuration, which means the configuration has been changed, but it hasn't been applied to the system yet because I haven't used the commit command. But if I was used my show command again, so I'll use show system host name, you'll notice that within the candidate configuration, we call it, it did take the command and the host name is set to test1. Again, it hasn't taken effect because I haven't typed in commit yet. Now, if I wanted to show you that just kind of with the big list of configuration changes, if I just use show all by itself, you can see that there's system and there's host name set to test1. So again, all I have to do is type in the commit command to apply that change. But the other thing that I want to point out as well is that we can roll back to a previous configuration at any point in time. So if I do a rollback question mark, you'll notice that we do have all the previous configurations here indicated by index number. So rollback space 0 would be my last committed configuration. So that's how I can revert back to a configuration after I make a bunch of changes, and those changes are stored inside my candidate configuration. I can roll back at any point in time. But here's the hook. Before I roll back to that previous committed configuration, I want to compare my candidate configuration, which I'm currently working on, against the previously committed configuration. So what we can do before I use that rollback command, what we can do is use your show command, but then you can pipe the show command into other commands. So I'll just use my question mark here, and you'll notice that there's a number of other commands that I could place after the pipe symbol. The command that I want is the compare command, which allows you to compare your configuration changes with a previous version, right? So that's kind of what we want to take a look at, is how to compare our configuration changes with a previous version. And the previous versions are specified with the rollback command. So I'm going to do a show pipe compare with rollback 0. Remember, that's I want to compare the candidate config with my previously committed config. So that's going to compare the configuration files from both, and it's going to identify the differences. So in this case, I should see that the current configuration or candidate configuration, it does have test1, while the rollback 0 has New York R1. So when I hit enter on this, it shows the changes. And what I want you to notice is it's showing that there is changes to the host name. Now what's interesting is it does show the change twice. So what they have here is the plus and the minus signs, which is indicating, something that's been removed versus something that's been added. So the host name of New York R1 was removed from the configuration while the host name test1 was added to the configuration. So that's kind of my candidate configuration being compared against rollback 0. So my point is, if I do a rollback 0, I know the only change that actually is going to be different between these files is the host name in this case. So to complete the example, I could then turn around and do a rollback 0 after comparing, and now I know that my host name is going to be set to New York R1. So I'm going to do a show system host name. So New York R1 was removed and then test1 was added. Perfect. So that's a very useful command to be able to compare your current configuration or your candidate configuration against a previously committed configuration. Very useful to use it before you do the rollback itself. So in this demonstration, you saw how to compare the candidate configuration against a previously committed configuration.